Hello, and welcome to Nobody Likes Watches, your channel for honest expert reviews grounded in professional and technical industry experience and insight. Who am I? I'm Mr. Nobody, your resident watchmaker who will be mentoring you in your development as an expert enthusiast, collector, investor, and hopefully future watchmaker, one review at a time. Today, we'll be taking a deeper look into the Corsair Diver, a piece from an original long-standing pillar of the microbrand world, Bernhardt Watch Company. Bernhardt has been around since the mid-2000s, originally producing contract pieces for military and police institutions and eventually making these tools available to the public. Fred B. Amos and his Bernhardt Watch Company are, in my opinion, the poster child of how everything in the industry of watches and world of collecting should be. They're one of the original microbrands that helped pave the way for the direct-to-consumer, cut out the middleman, and pass the savings on to the customer revolution that so many Kickstarter brands brag about, like if they had stumbled upon some previously inconceivable revelation. Fred is old school, in the best sense of the term. He likes to deal with his customer directly, gives individualized attention, and is extremely prompt in every exchange. He's a true pleasure to deal with and speak to, and he stands behind his product always 110%. He's the type of person that measures twice and cuts once to make certain that he can always over-deliver. On the rare occasion something might be amiss, he doesn't make excuses. He makes things right. This is why Fred and Bernhardt have garnered a cult following with a legion of faithful followers and supporters dubbed Fredheads. And if you can't tell yet, yes, I drink the Kool-Aid. I've been a Fredhead since the beginning of my mechanical watchmaking journey over 12 years ago. Having owned more than a handful of his pieces during my tenure as an avid collector turned watchmaker, I thought I should pay my respects and do right by a brand that has always done right by me. So I reached out to Fred, and he provided me with one of his current models for review, the Corsair Diver. Please keep this in mind that because this piece was donated, then this review is technically sponsored. However, that won't interfere with the honesty and unbiased nature of the review. I was clear with Fred that I would highlight any issues and suggest any improvements that would allow for the ownership experience to be optimal. He, in his good old-fashioned nature, said, I wouldn't expect anything less. So, with all of that out of the way, let's get things started. All right, here we go, taking a look at the Bernhardt Watch Company Corsair Diver. Now, I have to say, I've really been enjoying the fact that, as of late, these companies have taken note that consumers, watch collectors, we enjoy more than one watch, and as a result, we like to travel with our collections sometimes. So the fact that they've been using cases that are not just meant to sit on a shelf or in a closet somewhere or in a safe, but to be used for the purpose of keeping your watch safe and transporting it, I mean, that's genius, and I really appreciate thoughtful things like this. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we got inside. All right, so we've got our Corsair Diver right here. Looks like we've got our paperwork over here in this little pouch, and it's nice to see that they send it here with a nice thick piece of foam to make sure that it doesn't get banged around or scratched, that it's nice and secure there in that case. So I appreciate that. Over here we have our warranty card. The warranty is an international 2-year warranty, and important note is it says the warranty is transferable. For those who are flippers and for those who like to buy pre-owned, that's good news all around. That means that everybody benefits from the purchase of this watch. So thank you for that, Bernhardt. Here we've got their card, and on the other side we have all the instructions on how to use the piece. Now, being a watchmaker, I already know how, but it's always nice to know, even if you're a seasoned collector, if this piece has certain intricacies that you might not be aware of because you haven't had that movement before, that they've got it covered so that you can make sure that you're taking good care of your timepiece. So that's excellent. Now, let's take a look at the Corsair Diver. Okay, so let's take a look at the approximate dimension measurements for the case. We have a case diameter, not including the crown, at 42 millimeters. Case thickness at about 14 millimeters, and a lug-to-lug of 50 millimeters. Now, with all these dimensions, some people might think that this watch wears rather large. Actually, although those are the specs on paper, the way this timepiece wears on the wrist is a lot more versatile. I believe that the lug-to-lug is aided, as well as the thickness is aided by the way that the lugs are designed, that they curve down and they hug the wrist very well. So even though we have this thickness and this lug length, when it sits on the wrist, it actually sits more compact, and it sits not as long as it seems. And so there's no dreaded lug overhang that typically people with smaller wrists worry about. There's no unseemly gaps between the wrist and the lugs. It just seems to be sitting right there comfortably. And now looking at the bracelet, we have a 20 millimeter lug width, and this bracelet is all brushed satin finish. It has a slight taper down to the milled clasp, and that slight taper brings it to 18 millimeters here at the milled clasp. And this clasp is solid. It's exactly what you want in a tool watch. It is strong. It has a nice secure snap and lock and fit, and it just is impressive at its engagement and how well it locks. It's just a pleasure to use. And something that I want to point out as a watchmaker, something that impressed me, is you see this light white residue here and there as well. That is a sign of good watchmaking. A lot of people don't know, but bracelets actually need lubrication, and they need them in points like this, where there will be lots of interaction and friction constantly, due to flex, due to the customer having to engage with the piece and to put it on, take it off, and close it up. And so lubricating those points minimizes wear and tear, and it also allows for successful interaction and for the customer to be able to use their piece as it is intended to, and to not have anything that is a drawback or to cause damage. Expounding on the bracelet, it is extremely well made. This is the kind of quality that you would expect to find in timepieces that are 4 to 5 times the value of what you're investing here. It has solid links with screws, has solid end pieces, and the end pieces are made very well. They connect to the case frame in a very seamless manner, with next to no gap between the end piece and the case lugs and the end piece and the case frame. So it makes it seem like it's all one continuous piece. Very well done. So this very nice solid stainless steel case provides us with 200 meters of water resistance. Here we have a sapphire crystal on top, and on the screw down case back we have a sapphire crystal as well for the exhibition case back. The finish on this case is brushed. I see it more as a satin finish, and technically in the industry when we talk about brush, we'll see a coarser grain used on the finishing in order to give a stronger texture and to give a little more luster and reflection and play with light. Here, our finish is a lot smoother. The grain is a lot finer, so it's a lot softer. Now, that's a design choice, and I think it works well. We're here at a cross point between brushed and blasted, and I think it works to the benefit of this piece. Having that history for Bernhardt of producing pieces for the military, pieces for the police, having that tactical advantage in mind, where you don't want to give away your position, or we're looking at it as a tool for diving, and you don't want to reflect too much light to attract the attention of a predator. So what do? You have pieces that are reflecting light very little or not at all. And so here we have a piece where it's steel, so there is going to be some light reflection, but it's going to be minimized by a softer grain that softens the texture and the look of the metal. And so that aids in the process of making this watch a lot more versatile. So I appreciate how they went about finishing it, and I appreciate the fact that it's all satin finish. I think that all watches should be satin finish. That helps in masking the wear and tear over time. It also makes it a lot easier to refinish. It doesn't highlight the imperfections as much, and so it just allows for the customer to have something that over time it will wear well, and it will have still a nice look to it. And so I'm always a fan of brush finish, and I think that we should have brush finish on everything. I understand that it's nice to have some breaks in the finish, to have a nice high polish, detail on there. Typically on timepieces like on these lugs, we have this bevel. You might have a high polish detail there to break up the satin or the brush finish on the two sides and to just give it a little pop. Again, if we're looking at it from a tactical perspective, which is the background of this company and this piece, then we don't want that pop. But we still want to have those features of that bevel to add to the aiding in how the dimensions read on the wrists and how they make the piece more wearable to a wider audience, and also nice details that create a refined looking piece. So instead of having a straight slab that just sticks out for the lug, you have this turned lug. It looks a lot more narrow, so it looks a lot more versatile, a lot dressier, but it still looks tough and sporty at the same time. So all of those things aid in how the timepiece wears and the versatility of the piece. And it opens up doors for more clients to be interested in it. Now we're going to take a look at the aesthetic and functional aspects of the timepiece, beginning with the dial. A very nice Parish blue that is done in a high gloss finish, and it is so well manufactured that it almost seems like if it was a ceramic dial. The hands are high polished, the markers are high polished, very nicely done, very nicely finished, and they have Swiss Superluminova as the luminous material. And I enjoy the markers that we have here on the dial as well. Easy to tell, 12 is the number 12. And then after that, we just have regular rectangular markers. And hidden at around 4 o'clock, we have the date. And it matches as close as it can to the shape and the size of those markers, so it kind of blends in, and I appreciate that detail as well. And the reason I like the fact that the markers are kind of just more plain all the way around, again, it goes to that tool aesthetic. Nothing that is making the dial too busy, nothing that is detracting from the necessary information. We have our, for lack of a better term, cardinal point up here that's telling us, okay, this is 12 o'clock. From there, we can tell the rest of what the markers represent and what they are when we're telling the time. So there's no need to add any more clutter. I like the cleanliness and the sleekness and the streamlined, more modern approach to this dial. And so I appreciate it. Also, you're getting that extra information on this aluminum bezel insert. So it's also not necessary to clutter the dial. You have here all the 5-minute increments, and unlike most diver bezels that only give you those 5-minute increments up to the point of 15 or 20, this one gives it to you all the way around. And I appreciate that detail because from a diver tool standpoint, that is a valid, valuable tool and valid and valuable information to have for any reasons or emergencies. The bezel is a 60-minute, 120-click bezel that has tight, secure action. It is a pleasure to use. This is what all bezels should act like. There is no play, there is no slop. It lines up perfectly with the markers, and it has very, very good tactile response. The design of the insert, which is an aluminum insert, is very nice as well. I like that they went with a silver color here for the first 15 minutes, the first quarter of the hour, and then after that we went with black. It's a nice monochromatic play against the blue so that the blue doesn't bleed into the bezel, making the timepiece wear larger than it is. And it also allows for there to be some differentiation between the dial and the bezel. I think that these are some good design cues, and I appreciate the fact that we're getting then multiple color aspects here, and that allows for then if you're wanting to change up straps, you might not be as restricted as you would be if it was just all blue. We have this beautifully large crown. It does not make the watch uncomfortable at all. It fits well into those crown guards that we see traditionally in divers to help protect the crown from being knocked accidentally. And the fact that it's large allows for easy manipulation of the crown, easy to use the different functions, and it's easy to unscrew. Makes it easy to wind, to set the time, and then to set the date.
So it's nice to be able to have a crown that's easy to use and it's not going to slip. You have a very, very good grip there. And you have the nice detail that it's signed with the Bernhardt B. But this grip that you have on the crown, it's not going to be slipping your fingers. When you're screwing down a crown or you're setting the time, you don't want it to be slipping. You want it to be a sure grip so that it makes your setting the time and setting the functions and using them as smooth and as easy and enjoyable as possible. Because we use timepieces as tools, but we also use them for joy. We have a very nice screw down crown that is smooth. The threads on the crown are nice and thick, and the threads on the tube are nice and thick, so in terms of wear and longevity, they are meant to be used and they should last longer. And also on that crown tube, there is some slight lubrication. And that is, again, a point that we do lubricate. Some people might not be aware of that, but we lubricate the threads so that they do not bind, and so that you can also protect the wear and tear on the threads, and allows for ease of engagement. Some crowns that are difficult to engage, it's because the tube's threads and the crown's threads aren't lubricated, and so it might not be an easy engagement initially, and you might have to fiddle with it. And so that's not the case here. If we go to the hand setting, we can see that the hand setting is all very nice. So let's start here from 12 o'clock. Okay, so the hand setting is smooth, which is the first thing. The hand alignment is near perfect. Right at the middle of 12 and 3 o'clock. Right at the middle of 6 and 12 o'clock. Again for 9. Again for 12 noon. There we have a little past 12, which is fine. At around 1 minute, 6 there is still good. Here we have 9 o'clock still down that middle of 12. This is excellent, and you'll see the date flip, and it flipped over actually at 2 minutes before. And that is in tolerance for the industry. The industry is typically at a tolerance of +3, -3 for the date flip. Depending on the brand, there might be a second or more tighter tolerance, but for the most part, +3, -3 for the date flip, and also for the alignment of the hand when the hour hand is in the middle of the hour marker, and then the minute hand is lining up around here near 12. +3, -3 alignment is actually acceptable, and there's plenty of watches that are 3, 4 times, 5 times, 10 times the value of this that don't have hand alignment that is anywhere near as good as that. So that is, again, a detail that is extremely appreciated, and it just shows that they care about the customer, they care about the customer's experience, and it just shows respect to the craft as well. Not cutting corners and not ignoring things that, are pretty basic.
Now that we've covered the stellar build and the functional and aesthetic details of the Corsair, I'm going to get into a few improvements and a minor issue that I would like to address. These suggested improvements would launch a formidably valued piece into untouchable territory in the crowded sub-$500 affordable diver marketplace. Improvement number 1, the lume. The luminous used for the dial and markers, the Spartan sword hands, and the bezel pip is Swiss Superluminova. It has an excellent initial green glow, especially on the hands and the pip, but it fades over time gradually to a dimly adequate remnant brightness that easily lasts through the night and is legible, but it does not have a long retention of that initial charge. So let's see how this Corsair Diver Luminous Charge compares to other brands, because, as I mentioned, with this segment being so competitive and so crowded, even though a majority of the timepieces pale in comparison to Bernhardt's build quality, details, and their finishing, they might offer that shock value of heaps of luminous that make the watch a miniature lighthouse on the wrist, so many collectors as a result have become lume freaks. And due to that, they might see the Corsair's adequate and lasting glow seem as a factor that it is lacking. So I believe that if Bernhardt were to add some extra layers of luminous compound to the dial markers, the hands, and the lume pit, I think that that would draw in potential customers that have been swayed to other pieces as a result of their lume freak needs to have that super bright glow that just doesn't fade and is very, very overwhelming. Improvement number 2, the sweep seconds hand. The sweep seconds hand on this piece is high polish, and it gives enough contrast, but in certain lights it can get lost. I believe that if they had painted it white to match the color of the logo, that it would give really good contrast and help bring more legibility to this timepiece. Or they could also paint it in a layer, even a thin layer of luminous material to help with that legibility in the dark as well as in the day. Improvement number 3, the crystal. The crystal is sapphire, so it is extremely durable, extremely well made, and it is also very nice. However, as you can see, we can get a lot of reflection. I believe that if they could add an anti-reflective coating to this crystal, that would further aid in the legibility and further enhance the value. I know that it's become a more common thing for affordable pieces to have sapphire crystals, have anti-reflective coating, so the clientele is getting very used to that, and I believe that if they could offer that treatment, that people would be more intrigued in it. Now that we've covered the minor improvements that I believe would propel this dive watch to be crowned the ultimate diver in the $300 range, and honestly, I already do believe that it is, the premium materials, the fit, the finish, the customer service, all clearly point to the fact that this is the best value diver, especially in that $300 range. And if you can apply one of those seasonal coupon codes that they apply of 15% off, I believe they currently have one for Father's Day or it's going to come up, then you're getting this watch in the 200s, high 200s. So that's an excellent deal. You're getting a Miyota 9015, sapphire crystal, stainless steel case, solid bracelet. I mean, this is a no-brainer. Now I want to highlight a minor issue that this one came with, and it didn't really bother me. I brought it to Fred's attention. He told me to go ahead and do the review anyway. He said that he wanted me to be honest, but he said that after the review to send it to him immediately because he wanted to take care of it under warranty. And if you've noticed there, close to the minute hand, right above the N of the Bernhardt logo, there is a speck. Maybe you thought during this video originally that, hey, does this guy wipe his crystals down or anything? Because why is there lint? But it's stuck under the crystal. Now, this is something that I don't fault their QC department for. I don't fault them for. This is something that can happen after the fact, after it leaves their hands. It can be an impact during shipping or the change in pressure that causes filaments or debris or lint that are stuck between the crystal and the case when the crystal was installed, or the dial and the case when the dial and movement were being assembled into the case to work their way out. It's not a big deal. It's not going to affect the timekeeping. It's not going to affect the function, and it really doesn't even affect legibility or aesthetics. So just wanted to bring that to your attention and just make sure that you understand that that's an isolated incident. And to show that, I have another Bernhardt here, and I'll be reviewing this one soon. It's a new release for them. It's the Retro World, and I'm really excited to share this one with you. It's got a lot of features, and it's just so well built and so comfortable. If you look at it very closely, and I made sure I looped it with a 10-power loop, no debris, no filament, no problems. So I just want you to be assured that Bernhardt is excellent quality. So let's take a look under the hood and see what makes the Corsair tick. It's a Miyota 9015. It's a 24 jewel automatic, high beat, 28,800 beats per hour, 4 Hz movement. This 4 Hz frequency results in a smooth 8 beats per second of the sweep seconds hand. It has a 42-hour power reserve, and the accuracy tolerances are in the range of -10 to +30 seconds per day. I have owned a multitude of pieces with the 9015 since its inception and have never had any issues with long-term performance or durability. Please do keep in mind that even though these are serviceable, typically watchmakers will take the more cost-effective approach of a new movement exchange due to the fact that parts for these movements, like the current NH35s, are not available individually. The movements must be purchased complete. The performance of this particular Miyota 9015 has been stellar. Over the course of its initial 30-day testing period, it has been running strong and extremely accurate, only gaining a total of plus 105 seconds in that 30-day period, which equals to 1 minute and 45 seconds per month. That is awesome. This works out to be an average of plus 3.5 seconds per day, which is better performance than many movements that are in a higher pedigree or equal pedigree to it. For those who are always clamoring for Swiss movements, the Miyota is a respectable and comparable choice that can hold its own against the typical off-the-shelf ETA and Sellita Swiss movements that we see in higher-end watches. The movement has now been in production a little over a decade, and its specs, in comparison to the 2824 and SW200 movements, are for the most part equal, with some minor negligible nuances in jewel count and a few hours of difference in power reserve. From a manufacturer's perspective, the Miyota 9015 is an excellent option to be attained at a cost that can translate into an edge on the competition and savings for the customer without compromising performance. My personal opinion on the Miyota 9015 is that it is an excellent and stellar movement that is taken for granted, especially when it is compared as a stand-in for its more expensive Swiss counterparts. Now that we've taken a look at the timepiece from a build, finish, design, and performance level, I'd like to wrap up with my concluding analysis. When taking into consideration the Corsair and its quality premium materials, its attention to design and detail, and its pricing, I personally think that at its price there are few, if any, pieces that can compete dollar for dollar with its value proposition. The value of the bracelet and the movement alone almost account for half to 2/3 of the watch's asking price. If you were to buy a solid premium quality aftermarket bracelet, it would run anywhere from $75 to $150 US, and the 9015 can price out to anywhere between $90 and $115 US. Once you include case components, crystals, seals, custom dial in hands, bezel assembly, and labor to construct and warranty the piece, if you were to commission a one-off for yourself or mod an existing watch like an SKX, you're looking at an overall investment of $375 to $450 US, while this piece comes in at $334 shipped to your door. And let's not forget the previously mentioned 15% off coupons that bring this watch to your door at approximately $286 shipped. Let all of that information sink in for a moment. That's insane value! I think that this speaks enough for itself, so I'll leave it at that note. Please be sure to click on the subscribe button down below, as well as the bell icon so that you're in the know when I release any new content. Also, watch enthusiasts are part of a community, so please participate in the comments section with any experiences with this brand, as well as any other brands you've enjoyed or would like to see featured on this channel. Until next time, keep learning, keep collecting.